Hey everybody, this is Brian Hogue. Welcome to another week of Chiller Chat. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tonight my guests are David and Diana Silvio from Kiss of Death Productions from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They are a film and video company that produces movies in the spicy horror genre in Pittsburgh. So go ahead and get them on the phone so we can start chatting. And as always, feel free to leave any comments or ask questions, okay, as we go along. And I will look up and hopefully I don't miss your comments. If I do, just repost them because they might have scrolled past me.
Hello.
Hello, Diana. Is David there as well?
Yes, he is.
Okay, this is Brian. You guys are on Chiller Chat. How are you tonight?
Oh, that's great. We're doing good. We're doing real good.
Good. Hey, thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate that, and I just got done telling the viewers if they have any questions or comments to post them, and they're free to interact as we do this episode. So, well, let's start off with Kiss of Death Productions. Now, who thought of that name?
Well, that would be me.
That was you. Okay.
Yeah, she did.
now, and you've been around since what, 1979? But it wasn't called Kiss of Death Productions back then, right? It was.
We originally called ourselves Odyssey Films.
Odyssey Films.
And then as time went on, we had to sort of change the name because other people we find out that there was other companies called Odyssey Films or Odyssey Productions.
Oh.
We thought we'd come up with something a little more unique, and it appears it's not as unique. There's supposedly another Kiss of Death Productions somewhere in Florida. I think it's defunct, though.
Oh, okay.
We remained.
I'm still going strong.
You're still going strong.
After Odyssey Films, we thought, because we've seen other Odyssey films, and we said, okay, well, let's try something like American Conquest Pictures, and then eventually there's an American Conquest Picture somewhere. So it changed only because you have to be really unique to maintain something that's that you want to have.
Yeah.
Kiss of Death Productions, we really like that, so we said, all right, this is what we're going to keep it as,
Yeah.
So that's what we remained that.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, it's funny because even choosing a name is quite a monumental task. I mean, just even if you're trying to find a name for your website, there's like 50 other people already have it. Whether you realize it or not.
My first movie in 1979 was a zombie movie called The Fires of Autumn, and it was about 40 minutes long. My cousin Joseph Bondi and I, we were the producers and directors. We didn't know what producers and directors did at that time, but we got our equipment together. We wrote a script. Our script was sort of like a little bit of a version of Night of the Living Dead and or the Omega Man.
Okay.
Sort of a merger,
Yeah.
And so it was about 40 minutes long. We did it in Super 8 sound movie film, and we cut it together ourselves. We got our own equipment, and we showed it at colleges, Point Park College, Pitt, and community college, and a couple high schools also, Lawrenceville Catholic, the one. And so that's how we were able to show it because, you couldn't put it in a theater or anything, being so small. But we did show it around, and we had to bring two projectors because it had two reels. They were like 200 feet each, long. And you had to roll one projector. And then when the time came for it to be done, you started rolling the other one so that the movie continued to its end. We did like about 5 of those kind of movies. They're about 40 minutes each in Super 8 sound movies throughout the early 80s. And then we went to video. We were involved with PCTV 21, but they weren't known as that at that time. They were known as I can't remember what they were known as.
Warner Cable.
Warner Cable, yeah, Warner Cable.
Okay.
And they had like 5 locations in the Pittsburgh area, and I worked at each one of them. I mean, as a producer of projects, and did the little things, And then I switching over to video toward the end of the '80s. That's when I met Diana, and we continued on through with PCTV together there, making a lot of films and doing independent things.
Did you?
That's the history, yeah.
Okay, and your movies, the PCTV 21, they aired your movies?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
We actually we gave them their first feature film ever that they released, and
oh yeah.
On there. Yeah.
Nobody else did a feature film for PCTV until we did one in. It was like 1998. It was called The Black Raven, and it was about a woman vigilante, a karate kind of movie. She was like somebody who became this sort of a superhero. She called herself Black Raven, and she went around, kicking ass. Yeah.
That sounds like that'd be fun to make.
And it was like 80 minutes long, but they had to, like, because of their scheduling and the way they did things at PCTV, they had to, at that time at least, they had to break it into 2 halves because it was too long to show all at one time. They had to put a middle thing,
Little commercials, TSAs and stuff like that.
Right.
Just get a break.
Yeah.
That was the first feature-length movie on PCTV.
Wow, that's kind of neat. And now I remember when you were talking about the Super 8. That took me back to when I was a kid. I used to make tons of films on Super 8, and I used to edit those as well. And I had the old splicer, where you cut it and put the editing tape on. And I don't know if it was anything like what you were doing with your. I just had a little small version of it, but that just kind of took me back to the early '80s when I used to mess around with that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Did you use sound? Did you have sound on the film already?
No, I didn't. What I had to do was, it was kind of funny the way I did it, because I had to do the sound later on a cassette tape, like dubbing, basically dubbing. And it was just me and my friends. I didn't do anything. It was just when I was a kid. But I always had an interest in that. So when when I first heard of you guys, I really wanted to to meet up with you guys and talk to you, because you're doing something that I've always had an interest in, and you guys are actually doing it. With making movies, and now with the web series. So I just find this all fascinating.
We've been, I feel like we've been doing this, from like almost the beginning of sort of like self-made movies, non-Hollywood movies. I mean, I know a lot of people have done it way before us, naturally, and even while we were doing what we were doing, but and even bigger yet. But I just feel like we went through a process of working with film, and working with video, and working with digital, and it just seems like it's constantly changing, and who knows what the next one's going to be.
Holographic, probably.
Yeah. We have these little memory cards that you don't even have to do anything. I love it. It's great. I think Orson Welles would have loved this.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of those old directors would have loved what we have now. Well, he was working in everything, I mean, obviously film in the beginning in the Hollywood system and all that, but his last movie supposedly just came out, or at least is making some kind of runs through theaters of some sort, or it will. It's called the Other Side of the Wind, and I saw a preview for it, and he was trying, all through the 70s, he was shooting it and trying to get it together, and during the course of making the movie, he shot it in 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, Super 8 video. The whole movie is a hodgepodge of different looks, and black and white film and stuff like that. So it's really going to be an interesting thing to see. I've seen pieces of it, and he wanted this thing to
to be done by the time he was dead, and now he is, and now it's finally coming out, and I think it's going to be a great thing for filmmakers to even see the master doing it did something, that is, something that today he was ahead of his time.
Yeah, it's kind of neat that this hasn't been released yet.
Yeah, because it went through so many hands and changes because certain people owned pieces of it, different countries owned pieces of it. They had to bring it all together, and I think from what I heard, Netflix is the one who actually finally brought it together and owns it and is releasing it.
Oh, okay. All right.
It kind of reminds me of something that Lloyd Kaufman said about making movies. Film them any way you can, even if you have to film them on toilet paper.
Oh, now he did. Was he the author of "Make Your Own Damn Movie" or something like that?
Yes, he was.
He did several books too.
Okay,
and
making independent films.
He did a book called "Direct Your Own Damn Movie," and since he basically owns Me for Sale Icebox, he actually the movie we did. He wrote about the movie a little bit in that book.
Oh, okay.
So we're showcased in there just briefly, a couple pages, but it was fun to have it in print, to see it in print,
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that. No, okay. Now speaking of that movie, Meat for Satan's Icebox. That was where. Who comes up with your titles? And then I'm looking at one, Fetish Dolls Die Laughing, which I've seen both. I've seen both of these movies. They're really well done.
Well, thank you. Although some critics have other things to say about them,
Well, they're always going to do that.
Something about we shot it on toilet paper.
You got to do what you got to do.
It does have its problems too, because throughout the years, it like I said, everything changes, and it's so difficult to really get a grasp on great equipment to shoot on, because that's expensive.
Yeah, that could definitely be a problem.
As for the titles, now, Meat for Satan's Icebox was derived from a. Did you ever hear of the pulp magazines in the 1930s and 40s?
Yep, I sure have.
So there was one back in 1939. There was a story, and it was called Meat for Satan's Icebox. And it had nothing to do with what we did in the movie. The storyline had nothing to do with it whatsoever. But it was funny because back in the 70s, my grandmother gave me a whole stack of these old pulp magazines.
A lot of them were like detective stories and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but I got the horror one.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Terror tales, things like that. And for some reason, that title just intrigued the heck out of me. And I was only a kid back in the 1970s, 11, 12, 13. And I thought to myself, someday, I didn't even know I wanted to make movies at the time, but I wanted to be creative. I was always creative. And I said, that's going to stick with me for a long time. And sure enough, some years later, I was making my own movies. And throughout the 80s, I've never stopped since 1979, actually. And then eventually in the 90s, I said, I got to make a cannibal movie and call it Meat for Satan's Icebox. And so that's what we did. We stuck with that name, even though people were having trouble with that title. They were going, meat what? Huh? Oh, what? Huh? They couldn't say it, And then finally, even the actresses and the actors in the movie couldn't say the title for a while because it just seemed so strange. But as for the titles, Fetish Dolls Die Laughing came from the writer of the story for that script, Michael McGovern. He had, and he stars in it also. He was a playwright and a director of plays here in Pittsburgh. And he came up with the title. He wanted to call it Die Laughing. And I said, well, there's a Robbie Benson movie called Die Laughing.
Nobody went Patterson in it.
I did not want to call it Die Laughing. So I said, okay, if you want to keep that title, let's do something either at the beginning of it or at the end of it. Die Laughing something or something Die Laughing. So that's when we came up with Fetish Dolls Die Laughing.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it came about.
Interesting.
But like I said, with movie titles, I know some of them are a little long. long-winded maybe. Today, everybody wants a one-word title, but even Hitchcock did that a lot. But today is a one-word title, and you can't do that because nobody remembers that. Even though it's only one word, nobody remembers that. And you have to have something really strange and different, something unique that people will at least, when they hear it, they go, "Oh my God, what's that?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What's
So
behind those
our
words?
next movie after this is going to be called Cannibal Sluts of Satan's Place.
What's that now? Is that the name of your next movie, you say?
Yep, that's the one we're going to start probably in a year or so from now.
Cannibal Sluts of Satan's Place. It's sort of a companion piece to Meat for Satan's Icebox.
Oh, all
Without
right.
being a sequel or anything attached to it.
Yeah, it's not a sequel, it's just a companion movie.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Hey, now, speaking of interesting titles and interesting movies, Babes in Psycholand. That was your most recent film, right?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what can you tell us about that? Because that is complete and to the distributor at this point, correct?
Right. It's at the distributor. Hopefully, it'll be out for Christmas or something. Who doesn't want Babes in Psycholand under the Christmas tree, right? Basically, the story is about a police officer.
Uh-huh.
She's in pursuit of a criminal, and it leads her to a closed-down orphanage, foster home, and she meets a young man there, and she's hoping that he's going to tell her where this girl's whereabouts are, but I can't say what happens to the young lady that gets there, but she discovers a little bit more than she bargained for.
Don't they all?
Yeah, she runs into some psychopath in a mask, and she's either going to figure out who's behind it or just fall victim to it. We'll see what happens to her.
Well, there you go. We do a lot of as we say, spicy horror films, and they're all derived from those. The whole idea of this is derived from those pulp magazines
Yeah.
from the 30s and 40s. So they were all like spicy. They all called them spices, and we like that. It's just it's neat. Although our stuff, I think, is in terms of the spicy part, is more tame than soap operas.
Yeah.
If you
That's
look at a soap opera, you're going to see everybody in bed.
yeah.
But we don't do that. We just kill people off.
You're right. Right.
In
Although,
unique ways.
what's that?
In very unique ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. But speaking of the spicy, though, I mean, it probably is like what kind of rating would you say that your movies generally have? Like a PG-13 or R? I mean,
I'd say more R.
More
I'd
R.
say R for violence. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've shot nudity before, but we don't really, do that.
Yeah, we don't throw it out there all the
No.
time.
I mean, I know some
It's
people.
necessary.
Some people want that, of course. They go,
Oh, yeah.
why is there nudity? Well, it costs money too.
Yeah, right.
Nobody cooks a closed corpse. They're going to eat it. Nobody does that.
That's a
So
good
you gotta
point.
kind of stick with reality there.
That's a very good point. Now that was Danny Brickman stars in
Yeah.
Babes in Psycholand, and
Absolutely.
how was it working with Danny?
Oh, she's a wonderful girl. I loved working with her. Wow, she brings so much to the set, just personality-wise too. She lights it up. She's great. She's beautiful on camera. She's beautiful off camera. She's a real treat to work with.
Easy to direct.
Yes. Some actresses, they don't catch it. She comes prepared. She got it the first time. Rarely do you have to do a second take. Maybe if you just want a different angle. But that's about it. She's very professional.
I always do second and third takes with actors and actresses just because I want to see them do it again.
Well, didn't she did that as she was filming the series the what was it, The Outsiders? Is that
Outsiders, yes.
Yeah, and that was filmed
in
down.
In between that series, she'd be there on the weekends.
Yeah.
She'd have a day off. She'd be on our set. Like I said, wow, she's amazing.
Yeah. I can't wait to see it. Now, when do you think that will be out for the public's view?
Like I said, I'm hoping maybe December, but probably it'll be more like January.
I think more spring, but
no.
They gotta.
Yes.
So hopefully by the end or beginning of 2019, huh? Or the end of this year, beginning.
Somewhere in that range.
At the very end, there's a little special treat.
There is, like right after the credits, we get a little taste of Cannibal Sluts and Satan Place.
Oh, is that right?
You get a little preview, yes.
Tiny preview.
All right, now I got to see this. Well, not like I wasn't going to anyways. Though I've known about this for quite a while now. This movie, and I've been anxious to see it. But not only Babes in Psycholand, but your web series, Nocturnal web series, Blood Stories.
Yes.
Now you did the first web series ever, right? Is that correct?
The first Gothic web series.
Oh, Gothic web series.
On the internet was Nocturnal web series.
That was
and
the
that
first
was
one.
10 years ago, almost 11 now.
I dare someone to challenge that.
Yes, it is. It's the first Gothic web series.
Somebody out there will, if they hear this.
Bring it.
Yeah.
You know what? Speaking of challenging something, and I want to bring this up. It's a little weird thing. Like I said earlier, I did a movie called. My first movie is called Fire the Bottom. It was a zombie thing, and of course, Night of the Living Dead came out in '68. They did. Romero did in 1978. He did Dawn of the Dead, and I shot my movie in 1979. And unless somebody can challenge me, after Romero in Pittsburgh, and I'm saying in Pittsburgh, I'm the second person to do a zombie movie in Pittsburgh.
Oh, now
somebody challenges me.
That's pretty neat bit of information, a little trivia there. If anybody wants to look that up and challenge David on that, he gladly accepts that challenge. So, but and I would love to see that at some point. Maybe I can get some information from you, or at the end of this episode, which is only like 7 minutes away. I told you earlier.
Oh my God.
I told you earlier. This 30 minutes, they fly by. So I want to fit in the web series first, and then we'll get the information on how people can contact you. But the web series, now you were telling me that now this is about vampires, I take it?
Yes, it's about the vampires. We're bringing back some of the characters from the original series. Some of them are in different parts. Michael Burkett, he still plays the vampire, Dr. Ulrich Vonderlin. He's a hypnotist, but aren't all vampires, really. But that's how he lures victims in, by freeing them of their afflictions. For instance, one girl, she's afraid of spiders, and he takes care of that for her. She's not afraid of anything by the time he's done.
Oh, okay. Well, that could be a bad thing.
Yes, he takes good care of that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the story follows a journalist, and he uncovers an internet fraud. That's the story he's given, and it happens to be the doctor as a hypnotist, and they're like, I think he just takes advantage of people, takes their money. And so he's investigating it. And he does find out that the doctor is something a little bit more than what he is. And
it's also a love story because
there is a love story attached to it.
Yes.
Because his partner does fall in love with the vampire, and we know how
the journalist's partner, a female partner, she falls in love with the vampire, but he's not really in love with her because he has a conflict between her and his female
caretaker.
You know how vampires always have a a Renfield or or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so and she takes care of him. Her name's Ms. Cromwell, and she always expected him to be in love with her, and so there's a conflict between him and her, and then he gets involved with the vampire gets involved with the journalist. So there's a conflict between Ms. Cromwell, the vampire, and the journalist, and then of course the male journalist is trying to figure this all out.
Is this like a
It's
culture?
sort of a little bit like a twisty version of remember the Night Stalker?
That's just what I was about to say. Yeah, I love that show.
A little bit of that, you know, because our male journalist, he's sort of like a quirky Kolchak type.
Yeah, I remember that. Carl Kolchak. Yep, the Night Stalker. Yeah,
Jeremy Gavin. Our version of Kolchak, his name is Hanachek.
Oh.
And he's played by Linnell Jones III, a local actor.
Okay. Now, do you do this, or now you're in production right now? It's not available yet for the public, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, is your intent to do this by season, and if so, like how many episodes per season?
The first season is going to be 4 episodes. And at the end of it, I do want to continue the same way with another episode. They are web series, so they'll be put up, you know, on a regular basis.
Okay.
In a season. And we do have scripted ideas for
our journalist. Our Mr. Hanachek is going to investigate beyond the vampire one. He's going to investigate maybe a werewolf.
My favorite.
That sounds great. Jason, one of our viewers, he's saying the Night Stalker was fantastic, great show. I just love that show. I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to see Nocturnal web series Blood Stories, and how. And we're actually at the we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, if you can believe that, or the half hour. How can people watch your stuff? How can they get copies of your movies? Where can they contact you as well?
Basically on Facebook.
Okay.
You'll be able to go to like the Nocturnal web series.
Okay.
And the episodes are available there. They're also available on YouTube. All the episodes for the original Nocturnal were put into a feature film. So it gets broken up into like 3 segments. So I'd recommend that. I mean, you don't have to keep clicking. So that. And speaking of Kolchak and this series, the character Tommy Hanachek, the last name Hanachek. Anybody know where that came from in Night Stalker?
There's we derived that name from one of the victims in the Night Stalker movie, and actually the book too. The book is a little bit different than the movie, but very similar. But there's a victim, and her name, I can't remember her first name, but her name happens to be Hanachek.
Yeah.
So we said, all right, we're gonna have a homage and call our main character Hanachek.
All right, I gotta know which victim was it. Was that on the first one with the vampire?
Yes.
Yes.
Was it the Vegas worker?
Right. Yes. Yeah. But she was the one that went to her kitchen door, and then the vampire was right there and got her.
Yep.
And she had like a glass of milk in her hand or something or other. She put down a glass of milk, and then she answered the door, and then that was it. She was done.
She didn't even get her milk.
Right.
Wow, her night was really ruined, huh? Oh,
yeah.
No. Now, do you have a website as well?
I do have a website. You can find that also through any of the Facebook pages for Kiss of Death Productions. There's a Facebook production page, and the website's listed there.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that Dinner Girl 2000 Wixsite.com?
Yes.
Okay, I'll
That's the one.
put that
I was
up
going
right
to say,
now.
Meet the Saints Icebox is put out by Trauma Entertainment.
Okay, okay,
That's
fantastic.
if you Google Meet the Saints Icebox, you'd find it pretty much quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure everything down.
Yeah, made it a lot easier. Well,
Yeah.
hey, thank you so much for being on the episode tonight. We're actually at the end of the episode.
No.
I told you this time flies by. It's so quick.
I know.
I gotta work on making longer episodes. But thank you so much for your time, and thanks again for being on the show. I can't wait to see your movies and your web series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice talking to you.
You as well. And David, Diana, you have a good night, and
You too.
we'll talk to you later. And also, you folks, thanks for joining us. Have a great night. Have a good chiller night. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
How many times do I have to tell you, just because something isn't good doesn't mean it's bad?